How's it going, people? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to another video. Today we're going to be talking about cheap sleeper cars that you can buy for under £3,000. Last year I did 20k, 10k and 5k, and I thought I'd bring it back and do under £3,000 instead. If you want to see more videos like this, you want to see it go under £2,000, then make sure this video gets to 1,000 likes and I will make that video. And bringing back topic of the week as well, what is your favourite sleeper car in the world of any price range? What's your personal favourite? Let me know in the comments down below and we will have a chat about it. Don't forget, I'm in the UK, so prices in other countries may differ, and whenever you buy any second-hand car, maintenance, repairs, insurance, road tax, all that good stuff is important to remember. As I said, do hit the like button if you enjoy this kind of video, and subscribe as well if you're new. Without further ado, let's get into the video. But before we get into the video, I want to quickly talk about today's sponsor, and that is Carly. Now, Carly are offering a 15% discount to all of you lovely subscribers when you follow the link in the description or the pinned comment and go buy something on their site. Carly make technology that changes the automotive world, giving us as drivers more control over our cars with solutions that include manufacturer level diagnostics, customization using coding, live parameters, and service functions. Now, all of that sounds great, but let's actually put it into practice. Earlier today, I plugged Carly's OBD reader into my 2002 VW Polo 9N, downloaded the Carly app onto my iPhone, although you could also use an Android, and then I ran a health diagnostic on the car, expecting the worst, and yeah, not very good. But being serious, that gave me a great look into what codes the car was throwing up, what problems it might have, and what I need to do to the car in upcoming videos. I can also use the smart mechanic to get a good idea of why these are happening and where in the car these problems are arising from, making it much easier for me to maintain my car in the future. Not only that, Carly enabled me to look at the car for odometer fraud, look at the live stats of the car as I'm using it, play with the service intervals, and a whole host of other stuff. When I get my 4C or M4 later on in the year, I'll unlock even more things to do. It's just because my Polo is quite old. And I will probably end up coding in some nice quality of life changes to whatever car I get in the future. The app has both a free and a paid version. The free one gives you access to the main features of an OBD sensor, while the paid one gives you more in-depth features and unlocks everything else that the app has to offer. You can also get paid versions specific to your brand, so if you have a BMW, Mercedes, VW Group, Porsche, Ford, Toyota or Lexus, you can get one specifically for your brand. So if you'd like to get yourself a Carly, and I highly recommend that you do, please do go to the link in the description or the pinned comment and get 15% off of your purchase. And thanks again to Carly for sponsoring this video. Let's get into it. One of the most ridiculous cars to ever come out of the Vauxhall factory is the Meriva VXR, which is essentially a super mini multi-purpose family vehicle based on the Corsa platform and with a slightly less punchy Corsa VXR engine shoved into it. That is a 1.6 litre turbocharged inline-4 that puts out 177 brake horsepower and does 0 to 60 in 7.9 seconds. Not rapid, but for a super mini MPV, that's not bad at all. Now, I've spoken about the Zafira VXR before, and the Meriva is to the Zafira what the Corsa is to the Astra. Unfortunately though, for what it was, the Meriva was too expensive when new and didn't appeal to a big enough market. For that reason, there's just 147 of them on the roads in the UK today. It comes with everything you'd expect of a VXR though, including those bigger 17-inch alloys, the slightly more punchy body kit, and the Recaro bucket seats on the interior. I mentioned they're pretty rare, so finding one to buy may be tough, but when they do show up, they start at around £2,500 and will have around 100k on the clock for that kind of money. The most common issue is piston 4 failing, which you can diagnose with the car being down on power, and if you catch it, you'll save yourself an engine. The Goddess of Dawn was named EOS, and funnily enough, so is the next car on this list, the VW EOS to be exact, which hides behind its relatively average looking exterior a Mark V Golf GTI engine block, that 2 litre turbocharged inline-4 that puts out 197 brake horsepower, which takes the car to 60 in 7.6 seconds. Using this engine does make sense when you consider the fact the car is a successor to the Golf Cabriolet, and it sits on the same platform as the Mark V Golf, plus they do look kinda similar despite not actually sharing as many parts as you might expect. But it's not a shouty car in the slightest, which to me cements it as a sleeper. It is of course comfortable and pretty standard from a VW perspective, and it's only that special heavy convertible roof that stops it from being any quicker. These start at around £2,500, and for 3k you get a 2008 model with around 70,000 miles on it. The roofs can be troublesome and may need resealing, and I'd aim to buy one from 2009 onwards once many of the key issues were solved. Other than that, some owners have complained about coils, water pumps, timing belts and the PCV valve. Onto a very rogue one in 8th, but a car that I barely even know about, let alone expect to get to 60 in under 8 seconds. It's the Hyundai Grandeur, which hides a 3.3 litre V6 engine that makes 232 brake horsepower, taking the car to 60 in 7.6 seconds. This is an executive saloon to compete in the same class as cars like the BMW 5 Series and Mercedes E-Class. It was the flagship car for the brand and the most expensive model until the Genesis was introduced in 2008, and this model was the 4th generation, produced between 2005 and 2011. The interior has a focus on luxury, with heated leather seats and a bunch of other comfort-focused features, and for its troubles it won multiple awards around the world. This is a ridiculously rare car though, with only around 25 on the roads in the UK, but when they become available they start at around £2,700 and will have pretty high mileage. There are some known oil leaks and the transmission has been troublesome for some owners. I've included this car in a very recent video on cheap family cars, but it's hard to make a video on sleeper cars without including the Skoda Octavia VRS, which comes as both a saloon and estate, with a real focus on practicality. Despite that focus, it also has that 2-litre turbocharged inline-4 engine from the Golf GTI, which puts out 197 brake horsepower and manages 0 to 60 in 7 seconds. Note that this weighs around 100 kilograms less than the EOS, hence it's 6/10 quicker to 60 despite sharing that engine. If I was buying one of these and I really wanted a sleeper, I would definitely go for the estate, as it's a hugely unassuming car other than the slightly more aggressive body, and when I say slightly I mean very slightly. The alloys and the VRS logo are the only things that really give anything away, and to the average viewer they'll just see a Skoda. These start at around £2,500 and for 3k you'll be looking at a 2007 model with high mileage. Apply the same engine issues as the EOS, then mix that with some owners complaining about the interiors not feeling too solid, and those are the main problems I could find with these. It's not a well loved car here in the UK, but that almost adds to its sleeper status, the Cadillac CTS, of which there are fewer than 100 on the roads over here. It has a 3.6 litre V6 engine that makes 257 brake horsepower and will go from 0 to 60 in 7 seconds. Pretty punchy considering. Like the Grandeur, it sits in the executive car class and was aimed at being a cheaper mid-sized luxury car, at least here in Europe. It sits on the Sigma platform, which isn't that interesting, I just thought it was a good meme, but what is interesting is that even though it was unfortunately not available at our price range, you could get this car with a 6 litre LS2 V8 engine, which is just nuts. But that's in the CTS-V, which looks more aggressive and less sleepery. At least the standard CTS looks pretty unassuming, even if it is a bit rare. The CTS is hard to come by as I mentioned, but they can be bought for anywhere from around £2,700 with pretty decent mileage. Misfires, the EVAP purge solenoid and the thermostat are the key sources of problems on these to be aware of. So I hope you guys are enjoying this video. If you are, a reminder, 1,000 likes to do the same video again but at under £2,000 instead. Don't forget to let me know what your favourite sleeper car is in the comments down below as well, and subscribe as well if you're new so we can hit that 100k sooner. Next up is a personal favourite, especially as I'm a sucker for cheap luxury cars. The Lexus LS430 is a ridiculously cool sleeper car with its 4.3 litre V8 engine, which makes 278 brake horsepower and will get it to 60 in 6.5 seconds. If you've watched some of my previous vids, you'll know this is the luxury car that had its interior based on a room from the Four Seasons Hotel and seats inspired by first-class British Airway planes. It has some very cool interior features like the drinks cooler between the rear seats, but on the exterior there isn't much to shout home about. It's a very simple design that doesn't lend itself to having that large V8 block, even though it was developed in the bullet train wind tunnel. This is definitely the most luxurious car on the list in my opinion, and I would personally love to own one at some point, particularly because it's known to be very reliable too, with all the key problems being very well documented to help with maintenance so that it can hit hundreds of thousands of miles. These start at around £2,000 and for £3,000 you get a 2003 model with 100,000 miles on it. Another cheap luxury or executive car coming in at number 4 is the Volvo S80, which I've spoken about previously as a highly underrated car. But not only is it underrated, it's also pretty rapid, with its 4.4 litre V8 engine which produces 310 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 6.3 seconds. It sits on the same platform as the Ford Mondeo, and as is the case with many Volvos, it had a key focus on safety and was innovative in the way that it went about protecting its occupants when this second generation was released in 2006. The engine was actually designed jointly by Volvo and Yamaha and built by Yamaha in Japan, with a bunch of electronic features attached to it to put it pretty ahead of its time. The car isn't just a sleeper in terms of pace, it's a sleeper in terms of design, as that exterior does leave plenty to the imagination. This is the most expensive car on the list though, as it starts at our 3k mark with pretty high miles for that price. Many of these have done insane mileage, so know that they are generally reliable, but owners have mentioned problems with power steering, coolant leaks, lights, fuel hoses and parking brakes. Pretty much everyone knows that Mercedes can and often do make fast cars, but I like to think that there's a phenomenon with them that makes old ones look increasingly less enticing, all the way up until suddenly they become the most desirable cars around. I think a car that's going to do this one day is the CLK 430 with its 4.3 litre V8 engine that puts out 279 brake horsepower and does 0 to 60 in 6.2 seconds. The CLK class has now been discontinued, but it was always a class derived from others with E-Class design and C-Class underpinnings. This is the first gen CLK and was based on the W202 C-Class. It sits in the Grand Tourer category despite sharing its name with the CLK GTR racing car and homologation special. But to be honest, its stylings are pretty basic and it really lacks flair unless you go for an AMG. It's this that gives it that sleeper status in my books, as it looks like a very basic, boring Mercedes, but has that fat V8 hidden away. These Mercs start at around £2,500, and for 3k you'll get a 2001 example with 100,000 miles on it. Owners do have a lot of build quality complaints about these, and there are complaints about the automatic gearboxes as well. That said, the engine is supposed to be pretty good. Like Mercedes, Jaguar are also known to make some pretty fast cars. The S-Type R, for example, which I would say is still a bit of a sleeper, at least has some of the markings of a fast car. But even the standard S-Type comes with a pretty nutty engine, the 4.2 litre V8 that makes 300 brake horsepower and does 0 to 60 in 6.2 seconds, matching the CLK I mentioned at number 3. Though the nameplate and some of the stylings harks back to the old S-Type of 1963 to 1968, it was actually described by some reviewers as a spiritual successor to the highly popular Jaguar Mark II, which was both police and criminals' car of choice back in the 1960s. This car was really good for its time, with cool features like an optional touchscreen sat-nav which was pretty decent back in 2003. That said, it's pretty basic looking today and you wouldn't expect that 4.2 litre V8 to be lining up next to you at the lights. £2,000 the minimum that I could find these listed for, and for £3,000 you get a 2002 model with around 100,000 miles on the clock. Owners are surprisingly positive about owning these, and the main problem noted is fuel economy, with the engine actually being praised. I absolutely adore the Subaru Forester. I think it's one of the coolest cars they have ever made, particularly in STI spec, which is saying something considering I love the brand. But of course, STIs are worth a fortune, while the XT isn't particularly, though it still has a 2.5 litre turbocharged boxer 4 that produces 226 brake horsepower and will get to 60 in just 5.8 seconds, which is ridiculous for what is ultimately a compact crossover SUV. It's actually based on the same platform as the Impreza, and sadly the same engine was used too. So even though it gives great performance, it's known to be one of the least reliable blocks out there, with head gasket failure being well known, as well as problems with pistons hitting the valves when the timing belt breaks or stretches, meaning you'll need an engine rebuild. On the positive though, for its size it's known to be relatively dynamic, and is often compared to estates rather than SUVs in terms of how it handles. These start at around £2,000, and for £3,000 you'll be looking at a 2008 example with pretty high mileage. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, remember to hit the like button, I would really appreciate it, and subscribe as well if you're new. Massive thank you to Carly again for sponsoring this video, to the patrons as well for their support, and to you guys as well for watching. I will see you in the next one.
Listen.